Today's guest is the one name and one name only of Minot Sports Radio. Joining me now, it's Scott Kittell. Scott, you are a legend around this area when it comes to covering Minot area sports. Why did you want to stick around here in your hometown? What does this place mean to you?
Minot means a lot to me. I was born and raised here, Ben, and it's been my home. I got a family here. I've got a daughter and grandkids and that sort of thing. At one time when I first got into it and things were flowing, I thought about maybe I want to go somewhere else, maybe go a little bit more big time. But Minot's my home. Minot is my love. It's something that I will never. A lot of people say to me, Ben, why didn't you go somewhere else? Why didn't you try to pursue a bigger job? That sort of thing. That's what it wasn't all about. I'm a Minot guy. Minot sports is what I'm all about. And I tell you what, you look back at it now, at 62 years old, I would never trade it for anything. I would never do anything different than I've done.
100%. Now, obviously, Minot sports mean so much to you, but as you look outwardly, what place do sports have to this community overall, in your opinion?
It's huge. Sports in Minot and our surrounding area is huge. It's part of the community. And in this time that we're in now with the pandemic and all of that, I've seen that even more because people are just looking for something to do.
Chomping at the bit.
Oh, chomping at the bit. They want high school. They want college. Yeah, we want all our teams to win, Ben, but they're not all going to win all the time. But I just talked to enough people now in the last 3-4 months that say it just ingrains in me how important sports is to this, not just the Minot community, but to our viewing and listening area.
Sounds like it's been the case like that for the duration of your career, man. Just curious on the other side, what's changed the most over the years around here?
Oh, I've seen a lot of change. I mean, the game has changed. People have changed. Philosophies have changed. There's been times I've seen things over my 40-plus years in the business where there's things, I don't like what I see, but it's part of it. It's part of the culture. It's part of the society that we live in right now. You know what? I'll be honest with you, Ben. There was about a time 20 years ago where I just wanted to get out of the business, not because I didn't love what I was doing. It was because of the people that are around the business. And you know what? I'll be honest. Parents, fans, whatever, that just didn't understand the reason why high school and college kids play the game. Most of the kids that come out of Minot or the surrounding area or out of Minot State, they're not going anyplace else. Mm-hmm. Let them enjoy what they're doing right now. Don't make it a big issue. And, I got through that, and I just had to look at it that way, Ben, and just say, okay, there are going to be those people out there. I just got to get by that, and I did.
It had to be the right pick for you, obviously, because you said that was a long time ago, even that you were considering, boy, do I go this route or the other way, and like the fork of the road, whatever you had to put up with. What kind of made you stay in the business overall? Because people might be surprised hearing that from you, but obviously it means so much to you despite any kind of drawback there might be. Same with anybody else's job.
Ben, I stayed in the business, and I hope I get to stay in the business down the road. I mean, I'm not ready to retire or anything. It's okay. It's the wins. I love to see what happened to some of my teams over the years and some of the teams around the area. I stayed in it. I'll tell you why. And we're going to talk probably about that a little bit later. The people I have met in this business, fellow broadcasters, sports writers, TV guys, but the main thing are kids, coaches, parents, and fans. I love being around it. And that's why I stayed in it, is because I just enjoy having that camaraderie with them. Yeah, I love to see my teams win. Anybody wants to see their teams win. But again, I'll come back and I'll say it's the coaches, the players, the parents, and the fans.
I asked Alex Eisen of the Mile Daily News the same thing, which was anybody can look back and be at a championship game and think it's awesome. So, on first part of the question, I want to know what's been kind of your best experience that you've had, maybe in a title game or just overall. And then, secondly, even stepping back from covering the biggest events, what do you really enjoy the most or most proud of when it's not the Dakota Bowl or like the State Beast, something that people maybe wouldn't really assume about you?
What I like about what I've done, and if you want to talk about some of the things that I've had that I've been involved with that were great accomplishments, but the biggest thing is, Ben, is that I've got to watch kids grow up. They might have not been the best player on the team or the best athlete, but to see them, especially on the not so much on the high school level, but on the or on the college level, but on the high school level, to see that kid as a freshman, then he goes to a sophomore, he goes to junior, and he goes to a senior. You know what? I like the guy. I was an average athlete when I played.
Way below average on this side of the table, buddy.
I was probably below average too, Ben. But the point was, is I like to see these kids get that opportunity at that high school level to be able to participate in what they wanted to. Heck, I know that there's a lot of those kids that they weren't going to the next level, but they were enjoying what they were doing, and that's what it's all about. Yes, winning's great, but the experience they get doing that, because I've talked to a lot of kids that said, I wish I would have played 3 sports. And I don't mean to bring that up, but I wish I would have played all sports when I was in high school. And then 10 years down the road...
Because you don't get the time back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
10 years down the road, they'll come back and say, kick myself in the butt every time for not doing it. Mm-hmm. They can't get it back, So, that's the triumphs and the successes that I've seen as a broadcaster are great. But to see kids be able to experience what I got to experience in high school, again, I was a below average player, but you know what? You can't get that back if you don't take the opportunity in the first place.
Are there any examples of, man, it must feel crazy for you to cover a kid coming up through high school and then they become like that young assistant coach. They move into a head coach or maybe even an AD role, and you guys kind of obviously communicate differently now. But just to see people grow up in local sports, what's that been like? And do you really think of anybody overall?
Well, I think of a lot of kids, and I'm going to bring up one name, and the only reason and it just popped into my head when you asked me that question. There's a kid by the name, and he was a minor kid, mm-hmm. and he's now a head coach at a Class A school here in town, not in town, but in the state. That was a minor kid, Kirby Crafty, coaches at Grand Forks Red River. Kirby was a decent basketball player. If he listens to this, he's going to give me.
I'm going to put his name right in the episode description. I timestamp everything, so he'll know exactly what it is.
But Kirby's the kind of kid worked his butt off when he played, but he wasn't a very talented. They didn't look for him to score. Well, on the team that he played on, he didn't have to score. But to see a kid like that, and I bring Kirby up because he's been very successful in what he's done. And I don't know why that just, came into my mind when you asked that question, Ben, but Kirby's one kid that really, really just comes to mind when I talk about a kid that busted his butt in the program at Minor High, and now I get to watch him succeed as a head coach.
What was it like for you, first step at iHeart, mentoring a guy like Jesse Rosbed? He was like broadcasting with you for a while, and he had to make a big decision whether he faced, should I stick even in Minot? He had the opportunity to become the voice of you, Mary, Did you have much communication with him? That's another kind of growing up story within your business.
Uh, Jesse and I have a great relationship. Now, you got to understand, I haven't had a lot of contact with him in the last 3, 4, 5
Hmm.
months. But I can remember when we hired Jesse at iHeart, and he wanted. I can remember Jesse telling, and I get this not so much from Jesse, but from the people that hired him, say, yeah, he wants to do some soccer broadcast. He wants to do this, and nothing against that sport. Don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but the point was is that yeah, he was a young kid. I'm a, I'm old school. He's young school, and I tried to mentor him as best I could. The kid had a lot of ability, and he's proving that right now. And I hope down the road, if if he goes somewhere else and succeeds, I will take a lot of satisfaction into that. I know some of the things I told him, Ben. He probably just said, "Boom, it's out the one ear and out the other ear." But I think there's things that I conversations that we had that he took some of that from me and said, I'm going to utilize that. And I've seen that in some of the things that he's done. I think Jesse's got a great future. And, um, you know, just, you know what? Go for the dream. Whatever your dream is. I mean, my dream was to stay in mining. His dream might be somewhere else. Jesse's got a great future, a lot of ability. Let's hope that maybe he took some of what I taught him. Hopefully, he uses that too down the road.
We talked a little bit one time, obviously off the air before the show even started, about just anybody that kind of works with you in that capacity and wants to move up to maybe a fuller time role or what have you, whether it's in the Minot area or surrounding ones or just way down the road, big time, major college, things like that. A question that you kind of brought up to me, referring maybe a little bit to Jesse, was hey, where do you want to be like 10 years from now when you're making this tough decision, things like that? You mentioned, like, do you want to be doing play by play of Wisconsin football? Do you want to be doing this? Do you want to be doing that? And curious, as you've committed to the Maya area because you love it, um, any times where you had that kind of question yourself, and how did it kind of reinforce your passion for this area? The 10 years from now question.
I had some opportunities, you know, uh, earlier in my career. I could have moved. I could have. I had some opportunities to go other where or some other place. But at the time, I was going through some things in my personal life. I had a daughter that was 11 years old. Um, and yes, I ended up Ben saying no. Yeah, it probably would have been a great move for me, but again, it comes back to what I want. I wanted to stay here for my daughter, who now is a teacher in this school system in Minot. I've got 2 granddaughters. I got a great son-in-law, and yeah, okay, maybe I had the opportunity to go bigger, but you know what? I will never, ever, ever, to the day I die, I will never, ever say it was the wrong thing to do.
Awesome. Now, right now, as you look at the sports landscape that you cover at this point, do you have any kind of opinions that you were like super passionate about, or maybe any kind of takes growing up in your career that have been steadfast and true from beginning to right now? Or have you had any point of views over the years that have kind of changed as you covered this area?
I don't think my attitude has changed or my perception has changed. I mean, what we did in 1970 or 1980 to 1990 to 2000 to 2010 to now 2020. I mean, things are going to change just because of the landscape that we live in and the society that we live in. I love, you know, I'm maroon and gold from day one. I was minor high graduate. I have followed. Yeah, there's been times, and there'll be coaches that'll tell you. There'll be times that they'll tell you, Yeah, Scotty K said this or Scotty K said that. Yeah, there's times I've sat in the broadcast booth and I'm going, I don't understand what they just did.
Yeah.
And but but that's my opinion. I'm not getting paid to coach that team or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Minot State, same thing. We went through a lot of different things at Minot State through the college level. Moving from the NAIA, where we were really successful in going to national tournaments in basketball, making the playoffs in football. We moved to Division II. At first, I was not a proponent of that. But now, as I look back on it and got to experience it, it's the best move that Minot State ever made. And it wasn't because just of athletics. Part of it was academics. And sometimes I think as broadcasters, and I don't know if you feel this way, Ben, because you're still in your infancy of your career here.
Yeah.
Is sometimes we as broadcasters, as I've grown older, forget about the other end of it. We just think about the wins and the losses and the championships and the athletics and the sports. We forget about the reason they're going to that school, be Minot High, Minot State, is to get an education.
Mm-hmm. When you're covering teams for Minot High and Minot State, in your opinion, how passionate are you from one end of being like super critical and open about like what on earth is going on out here on the field, or what are they doing, managing or whatever, what have you, to the other end of like I've seen like when you buy into something and you like it, I mean you're all over talking on social media about, boy, I really buy in. Like I think Coach A is probably a prime example. Just kind of how do you manage your support and criticism of these area teams?
I have no problem criticizing a coach, and I have no problem with that coach coming to me and saying, okay, I heard you said that. Because most coaches don't hear what I say on the air, but they might hear it through somebody.
Sure.
And in this day and age with social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want to, they probably hear that. I have no problem with them approaching me and say, okay, you said that. Why did you say that? Because to be honest with you, Ben, in the sports I've done, and I don't do hockey, don't know anything about the game. If I had to do a hockey game tomorrow, I'd have to bring in somebody that had some hockey knowledge. I'd be the color guy. They could be the play-by-play guy. Mm-hmm. But I think I understand football enough. I mean, basketball I know really well. Baseball I think I know pretty well. So I've had no problem over the years to criticize somebody for it. I have, and I want to go a little bit further here if it's all right with you.
100%.
I'll criticize a coach. On the high school level, I'll never criticize a kid.
Yeah.
Kid is told to go out there and do something. Okay, he didn't do it. But you know what? He's 15, 16, 17 years old. Now,
does that change? Does that change when he goes to MSU? Like it's college age.
That's exactly where now you come to Minot State and you don't do what you're supposed to do. I'm not going to call the kid out on the air, but I'll say, hey, well, maybe I will. Maybe Ben Barr got beat on that long pass.
Yeah. Which would happen.
And some people have told me over the years, well, why do you separate the high school kid from the college kid? I said the high school kid is just playing the game because that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a part of it. Now you get to the college level, you're looking for something now. I mean, the reason you play college football or basketball or whatever is because you're good enough that this college wanted to take and the other thing is they're 18, 19, 20, and 21 years old. If they can't take the criticism, I'm sorry. And I have no problem with a player or a coach in the college level come back. And I've had them in the past that have come back and said something to me. I have no problem with them coming back to me and asking me, okay, why did you say that or whatever. The point is, in the end, I can sit down and say, hey, it's nothing against you, Ben Barr. Mm-hmm. It's just because that's what I observed. My deal is especially radio, and I worked TV at one time, but radio, you're supposed to paint a picture.
Yeah.
I want you to be sitting at home and you're listening to a Minot State or a Minot High game. I want you to think that you're at the game the way I'm describing the game.
I'm not going to even like pretend to say like it doesn't have any place like on the air really, especially like in this market to be real critical of like a high school kid at all. And I'm not going to pretend that like maybe some fans go there, okay? But
do.
yeah, definitely on air, it doesn't really have a place for it, I believe. Tell me a little bit about like obviously you're covering these events where there's other media guys there, whether it's radio, TV, or the newspaper. What kind of maybe camaraderie kind of builds up between people? I mean, even the friggin' refs. I mean, we see the refs all the time out and about. What's that been like for you?
I'll tell you, I'm glad you brought up officials and referees. On the broadcast end of it, be it TV, radio, or print, I have a great relationship for the most part. Now, somebody might say I don't, but for the most part,
all things considered independent, yeah.
Yeah, I have a huge camaraderie and the is so vital, and it's so neat to have that friend I can call in Devil's Lake or in Mayville or in Fargo or in Bismarck or Dickinson or wherever it is. And when I see him, I mean, there's a lot of times, Ben, I'll tell you on the broadcast end of it, I mean, we missed some state tournaments this year. I missed the state track meet, which is one of my favorite events of the year. I haven't seen these guys. I talk to them on the phone or social media. We have in North Dakota, we have, I'm trying to think of the word, the group of broadcasters that we have around the state, our family.
We're tight. It's close-knit.
Oh, very.
Way back or new, it's going to be.
Very close-knit. And the thing that impresses me the most about it is we've got us older guys like me, but we also got the younger guys coming in, like you. I didn't know who Ben Barr was.
Nobody did.
But we wanted to accept you. You guys, I mean, you came to Minot, North Dakota from out in the East Coast. You didn't know what
yeah.
You didn't know what the hell you were walking
exactly.
into.
Right, yeah. A little bit of cold.
But us older guys said, okay, we're going to bring them in. You and I have had a lot of conversations off the air, just talking about different things.
To that point, I think it's also maybe a matter of, and you can agree or disagree, that everybody's been there when you start.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And just to qualify just the relationship that with refs, because they're a part of the game, of course, and the broadcast, in the spectrum of being buddies and talking about them, they're in the grown-up category. If you see something that doesn't make sense to you, how are you handling that?
That's
even if you're buddies or not.
Oh, I'll tell you what. Over the years, and Ben, because you've been with me, you've seen me. In Minot, all those guys are friends of mine. They'll tell me if I said something wrong in the air or I was brutal to them or whatever.
They can hear you courtside sometimes, I bet.
Well,
yeah.
That's because I talk too long.
Yeah.
But the point is, at the end of the day, we can sit down, we can discuss it if they want to bring it up, and everybody's happy. I mean, some of my best friends in the city of Minot are officials, be it football, basketball, baseball, whatever. And you know what? They don't always agree with me, but they still, I guess, I'm trying to think of the word. They respect what I said.
By the same
and I respect what they said. It's not easy being an official.
Yeah, 100%. They'll tell you 100%. But
the one last, the other thing on that I wanted to say, and I've got hundreds. I don't know if we have that many in the state of North, but around the state of North Dakota. You go to Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck, Dickinson, Williston, Devil's Lake, any small towns. I have a lot of officials that I consider friends of mine. Now, some of them might say I'm not a friend of them, but so be it.
Yeah, I mean, they got to be brave enough to say it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, you talk about hundreds, you got to have hundreds of stories anyway. And was there ever a time maybe that like Guido or Brian even shot you a stare during a game at the alt, I'm sure,
Oh
or
yeah,
anything like
yeah.
that.
But you know what? I had the opportunity, and I bring this up. You bring up Guido, Todd Hoffman, and then Brian Opworth. I had an opportunity this spring or this winter, excuse me, to take a couple trips with them to the game they were doing, and it was fun. It was fun to see how they interacted as officials. I mean, I sat in the officials' room and they'd be going through their pre-games and whatever. And it was just kind of fun for me as a broadcaster, just sitting there and taking that all in. I mean, man, I don't know if Brian or Guido are going to listen to this, but I consider...
They will now, yeah.
My point is I consider them, and there's a lot of other officials in mine that I consider really good friends, but those two are probably two of my best friends that I've met through officiating.
Ryan's line that he'll have for me every time when I'm standing on the corner of the auditorium floor as he's running back and forth, and those guys all have to be in great shape. Underrated, by the way, is I got to get his best side whenever I get the highlights for the news. I tell him back, your best side is your top side, and he's always paired up with every other bald referee around here.
And the last thing I want to say about officials, it's not an easy job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't care what call you make, Ben. Somebody in the stands isn't going to like it or thinks that you made the wrong call. And some of them will tell you that.
Yeah.
I appreciate officials so much for what they do and for what they have to put up with sometimes. I'll tell you what, it's amazing the job that those guys do.
Every time that I get a chance to say something to them during the timeout, I always take the opportunity. They're hanging out at the free throw line, and I look at the score late in the game, and I'm just telling them, it's interesting that the over-under or the spread is this, and I always give the numbers so, like, they're all crazy close. Like, their call's definitely going to have something to do with something that doesn't happen.
Hey,
I don't even have to wink at that. That doesn't happen.
I don't want to deviate what you're saying, but I have to tell a story about Todd Hoffman, Guido. Mm-hmm. We know him as Guido, but most people know him as... I had the opportunity to do, I think it was the 2005 state championship Class B game. It was New Rockford Cheyenne against Bottineau at the Dome. It was at the Dome. And Guido had the game. I think it was his first championship game on the state level. I broadcasted. It was 2 overtimes. He was an official. And to this day, we still talk about we still talk about that game. It was fun for me to broadcast it. It went 2 overtimes. New Rockford Cheyenne beat Bottineau, I think, by 2 points. But to see my buddy, my friend, Todd Hoffman out there doing the game, that was, those are kind of memories I will not forget.
And there's plenty of them for sure. Now, part of the equation that was from a couple minutes ago that I'm not sure everybody would guess, Scotty, is the state track and field meet that we had to miss out on this year. Why is that one of your favorite places to be? Tell me a little bit about that, because, I wouldn't have assumed it. And considering I don't know how friendly track and field is to, like, play-by-play and stuff, well, people would guess that.
In the first years I went to the state track meet, Ben, I went down there and I do, periodic reports and that sort of thing. And then about 3 years after I started doing that, I was asked by Jim Hausler, who was the athletic director at Bismarck Public Schools at the time, if I wanted to help out with the PA, public address, announcing the athletes and that sort of thing. So I had done that. I think it's been 8 years I've done that, and I missed that. Oh boy, I wanted to be in Bismarck last week to do that, because I love state basketball. I love state football. I love any state tournament. But at the North Dakota State track meet, when you get Class A and Class B boys and girls involved at the same place at the same time, the athletes that you see down there is totally unbelievable. I've always looked forward to the state track meet. Yeah, I'm not sitting there doing a full-fledged, from start to finish, play-by-play. And in the last couple of years, I haven't done reports and that sort of thing, but to be there and watch these tremendous athletes. I mean, I look at Laura Racler, who won 4 state titles. She ended up going to Oregon and running track in college. And I mean, she tried out for the Olympic team, that sort of thing. State track meet, as far as I'm concerned, and I hate to take this away from basketball or football, is the premier state meet in North Dakota. You take all those athletes, boys and girls, Class A and Class B, and you put them in one venue for 2 days, and you will see the best.
I hear a lot of football players say that people got to know, and they just don't think about it because they don't think of the sport right away, that the transition and just the relatability of being an awesome football player versus being an awesome track and field player, depending on the event, is there, and they just want to give credit where credit is due, for sure. What's been the biggest difference over time between TV and radio coverage around here, because you had to make a change from one to the other?
Well, I tell you what, Ben, the reason I got into the business was radio. But because of the situation I had when I first started in there, it was a television and radio company, so I did both. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the TV end of it, but when I got the opportunity when Chester Wrighton sold his radio stations to Clear Channel, who is now iHeart, and I had the opportunity to go back to radio, I jumped at the opportunity. Because the reason I got into this business was of radio and basically to be a sports play-by-play guy. I love the TV end. I love going out to Minot State like you do, or Minot High, and doing interviews with coaches and kids and that sort of thing. But my love was to, on a Friday night under the lights at Dwayne Carlson Stadium or Saturday afternoon at Herb Parker Stadium, to go on the air and say, okay, I'm going to tell you a story about how this game goes. Hey, I hope we win, but if we don't win, that's one thing I'll say about myself in my 40 plus. I've never, I try to paint a picture, and I'm a homer. I'm a homer, always been a homer, and always will be a homer.
Okay.
But if things aren't going good for my home team, I will let people know, hey, Minot State's not very good today. Minot High's not very good today. We need to step it up. I'm a homer. Everybody knows I'm a homer. But I will tell you the story the way it should be. And that's how I learned the business.
And it kind of does jive between, like, you got to do, like, the show on TV. Like, I can only get a couple highlights every which way. I can never be for an entire game, and that has to be a big part of it. I don't know how many people know this, but, I mean, we were actually talking about doing a little bit play-by-play, but, I mean, I get how, like, obviously my schedule didn't jive. That would have been a freaking blast. Can you imagine Skittles and Ben Barr on the air? That's another story for another day, but something that I give credit for you guys, whether you're at the paper or doing radio, is you have a more full point of view of the pulse of sports when it comes to how teams perform over the course of a bigger stretch of a game. A lot of times I'm at 5 different games. I get 2 buckets for each team. Get out of Dodge, and I got to read a lot of the stats that guys like you put together, things like that. So I say that to say this. How much do you like tracking the in-season, like the sports polls and the award consideration, all that voting? Because I feel like you guys are definitely qualified to be doing that, and you're not only voting on it, but you're like the top like vote reporting guy. You know, you send all your stuff to Scotty K for him to count it up. You know,
I think it's a great thing. I know coaches don't look at it that way. I mean, it's just a poll, and and me as a broadcaster, and I don't know if other broadcasters feel this way, but it's a conversation piece. It's a conversation piece. We bring out the poll, and they say, "Oh, Minot High is number 1." Why are they number 1? But I am going to throw this in. Over the course of the last 3, 4, 5 years where I've taken care of some of the polls, we got 20 to 25 guys that are voting on that. Now, I understand the problem that some people have is that you have people voting on teams that they never see play. They're going off scores or going off talking to a fellow broadcaster or talking to a fan or a parent or whatever.
Reading the records.
I understand it.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'll say about polls, is it's a conversation piece.
Mm-hmm.
And it changes from week to week, and we see that. You've seen that since your day here in North Dakota, in Maya. Awards, I love the fact we got a meeting coming up next week. It's our year-end awards that we do as an association. Some people aren't going to agree with our choices, but it's fun because we talk about a lot of different athletes, coaches, teams, uh, people that should probably get a special achievement award. It goes back to All-State. I mean, you know as well as I do, Ben, you probably talked to some people during our All-State naming of our All-State teams. We got a lot of people that just condemn us because we don't know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. We're North Dakota. I wonder what happens in some of these bigger states.
Yeah.
Because on the Class B level, we name 5 first-teamers and 10 second-teamers. On the Class A level right now, we do 5 and 5. Somebody's going to be missed every year. I understand that. But sometimes you've got to take the insight that you're getting from other people around the state or other broadcasters who have watched all these people. You got to take that into consideration too. Yeah, I'll guarantee you, there's guys or girls that I have voted for in the past that I never saw play. But you know what? I respect my fellow broadcasters and writers and TV people to tell me, yeah, they're that good. Yes, I know we've missed kids over the years, mm-hmm. and we will. I mean, it's not scientific. It's a bunch of us that get together and say, this is who we think are the best. Yeah, we've missed them, but you know what? Overall, I think we've been pretty damn good at it.
Yeah, so I guess what I could succinctly say is the radio and paper guys, because they're there, they have the fuller eye test compared to TV guys like me. Yep. And just with looking back at your experience doing all this voting, what was kind of a time where the voters looked real bad? Anything really stand out? Like an absolute number one team going down to somebody that you didn't. Yeah.
Early in the year in any sport, I don't care.
100%.
Because everybody's voting on
A football.
Well, yeah. A football or double A football or basketball or whatever. But everybody's looking at the preseason polls. And I can remember, I'll go back to just this past year, 9-man football. The number one, or one of the top 3 teams in the state go 0-2 to start the year. And we're going, oh boy, we look bad on this. So, early in the year, but there's been years. I mean, there's been years where number one has been there, and then all of a sudden, boom, some team out of nowhere beats them. Are they really the number one team? Well, maybe they have a tough night that night, I mean, I remember back in the Class A boys basketball this year, Fargo Davies is just blowing everybody out. They're number one in the state. They go to Grand Forks Central. Nothing against Grand Forks Central, but Grand Forks Central has no reason beating them. Mm-hmm. Beats them. And now everybody said, oh, so Fargo Davies is the best team in the state? Well, apparently that night they weren't. But that's the way it goes.
Quick note on 9-man football, just because I thought about it as you were talking about small football. Can you imagine being at the game this past year? I wish I was for a highlight because there's plenty of it. How on earth would you fare going to that Drake Animus Midway Minto game? I think the final score is 107-84.
The 6-man championship?
Oh, yeah, 6-man, yeah.
Guess what? And I think it's great that North Dakota is doing the 6-man football because Drake Animus and Midway Minto, they can't compete at the 9-man level. I think it's great, and I hope the North Dakota High School Activities Association and North Dakota looks at expanding that. I mean, if there's schools that want to do, I hope they start sanctioning everything, and and they're part of the Dakota Bowl. I think it's great. Yeah, okay.
That game was
what was it?
107-84. The only time you get a Magicians basketball game that's like that is when they're blowing somebody out and they have 100 and they have a little. little bit.
But you know what? That's what. Hey, fans love that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's score. You know.
You think like Guido and Brian are in shape running down the court?
Yeah.
Imagine those football refs going up and down the field.
That's probably why they'll never do six-man football.
Maybe we'll have to get that confirmed.
Yeah, okay.
Another part of the Scott Kittell radio empire is the Wednesday nights that you had at Buffalo Wings and Rings doing the Scott on Sports show. I was on there once or twice talking about some Class B basketball. How important was it for you to make – that's kind of comparable to me only being able to get highlights and then going out. During a game, you have to kind of refer to what's going on in the game. But with Scott on Sports, you got to step back and maybe sure you had your previews and recap things, but maybe some more life-type questions. Why did you want to have that expanded look? It's like a podcast, man.
What I loved about that is because I got to engage coaches and even, at times athletes, but I got to engage coaches in a different way, on a more personal level. I mean, the relationship, and I'm going to bring him up, relationship I have with Coach A at Minot State, I don't think I would have that relationship with him if I didn't have that avenue or that show. I got to know Coach A outside of being the Minot State coach. I got to know Dean Winchesky, who I watched grow up when he played at Bishop Ryan. But I got to know him in a different way. Barry Holman, go right down the line. Jeremy Feller, Brock Teets when he was coaching. Now that he's back coaching
again,
now.
Yeah.
But the personal end of it was I got to know them it wasn't all football or basketball. It was or coaching. It was I got to know them, and I got to kind of find out who they were as a person. I bring up Coach A because Coach A and I hope he says the same thing. We've gotten pretty close over the years. I didn't know him when he walked in here as the head coach. I didn't know him the first day. I said, "Hey, Coach, can you come up to my show on Wednesday night?" And he was always one. I would call and he'd say, "Hey, can you stop up and talk?" Anytime. So it's the personal end of it. I got to know them outside of the coaching realm.
He told me the feeling isn't mutual. I'm just kidding. Talking about outside the realm. Have you learned anything interesting about maybe some coaches and athletes' interests away from the game at all? Or are you just all dialed in on the sports 24/7? Yeah.
No, and I hate to bring up Coach A again, but
there we go.
Coach A is another guy that, he came in here, got the job, and I got to know him a little bit on the personal end of it. But like after a tough game where we got beat, and Coach A comes up to the broadcast and does his post game, and it hasn't been a good game. It's probably a game that didn't go good. I get done, Ben. I'd break my equipment down. I'd walk into his office and just say, "Hey, tough loss today. We'll see you next week. I'll give you a call about the show or whatever." I got to meet his wife in a different way. I got to meet his kids. See, a lot of people don't understand that these coaches have wives and kids. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't think about that. We don't think about that they have a life away from football or basketball or whatever. But during their season, their wives and their families probably don't see them more than maybe 2 hours a day.
When I was in college, there was one moment where it was the first couple years that Mark Turgeon took over for Gary Williams, who is a legend, and there's always going to be a demanding part of a fan base no matter where you go at high D1 level. And Turgeon has really turned the program around, but when it was first couple years, it was rough. They weren't top ranked considered. They didn't have the expectations that they have right now. There was one of his post-game pressers where I covered it even for student radio, and he had to say boy, it's a tough loss today, but let's be honest here. man, it really stinks when like my kid leaves the gym because he's like overcome. He feels like crying because he hears everybody in the Comcast Center like booing down on Coach Turgeon and stuff, and things can get real sometimes.
Oh, it can get real. And sometimes a fan or whoever it is says something and doesn't know that there might be a wife or a girlfriend or a family member sitting behind them. People have to understand that not just coaches but athletes are all human beings. They're just like us. They just happen to be a lot more intelligent about what they're doing as a coach and a lot more talented as an athlete. It's just like, and I'll bring this up, just kind of the things that we saw the last 2 weeks with sports trying to come back, with the foursome again with Ricky Fowler and Matthew Wolf in golf, and
Tiger and Peyton, and then Brady and Phil.
Oh, that last Sunday was so fun, because it gave us the human interest end of it. That, you know what, these guys, Peyton, Tiger, Tom Brady, and Phil Mickelson are no different than we are. They just happen to be very good at what they do.
Tom Brady had it rough on the front nine. That was something else. Yeah.
But the point is they're no different. They're human. And I think sometimes fans, maybe more on the professional level than they do at our level, high school or college, don't understand. They just think that they're just people that just, they do this and they don't do anything else. We just play football. We just play basketball. You know, the point is I thought the whole thing that they did this last week with the golf, and I don't mean to get away from it, was so great, because I don't care who won or lost or who had a good shot. It was the camaraderie between them and the banter back and forth made me feel like, you know what, Tom Brady's no different. You know what? I may not like Tom Brady because he played for the New England Patriots, but he's a human being. He's a pretty good guy.
He blades just like the rest of us and stuff. And that was probably one of the funnier live moments I've seen in a long time. Obviously, sports has been away.
It was so fun to watch, and I didn't mean to deviate from what we were talking about.
I'm talking about, like, he was terrible for, like, the first 6 holes, and he drains it from, like, 150. That was fantastic. He tells Charles Barkley where to stick it.
And then tells Charles Barkley to shut up.
I wanted to quick touch on just the post-game interviews that you have on the radio airwaves, and you talked about Coach A just being the class guy and owning whatever happens, whether it's good or bad. And I know there's a little bit of time between the final buzzer and when they're talking to you to kind of maybe a cool down period, what have you. But even still with that, emotions can run high, whether it's a good, tough game or an awesome moment. So was there ever a time in a post game where it was a tough loss and you could feel like any kind of tension to anything going on? And then conversely, was there like a high point moment that, boy, all of the momentum from this great win or performance really rode into the post game?
I'll tell you what, not so much on the high school level, but on the college level, you know, I always get post games with, be it Coach A or Coach Rudolph back in the day, or Coach Stevenson back in the day. Coach Holtz, when he was at Minot State, was very good about, even after a tough loss, he doesn't want to come back out and talk about it. And Coach Mert, you know, I go through this, and maybe I'm deviating from the actual question, but the thing that impressed me the most about the coaches that I've dealt with, and most of them are on the college level, because we don't do a lot of post games on high school. I have never, ever been turned down by a coach after a tough loss, be it Coach Merkin, Coach Holtz, Coach A. I look back at Coach Green. I mean, Sheila, I spent a lot of years with Sheila. I mean, she was at Minot State for a lot of years. I spent a lot of time on a bus with her and really got to know her. She's one of my favorite people in the world. I think she was a great coach. But I can remember, and I can't remember what year it is, Ben, but the year we went to the national tournament, and it must have been 2008, because that's where I made the trip from Sioux City, Iowa to Branson, Missouri, and got back to Sioux City, Iowa the next day to do their second game with
rock and roll.
Yeah. But the point was, is we're playing in the Elite Eight against one of the premier teams in the nation. Uh, Traditionally, we're one of the best in NAIA in Morningside, Iowa. We go to Elite Eight. It's in Sioux City, Iowa. That's where Morningside is. We hit a shot at the buzzer that would have put us into the Final Four of the NAIA tournament that year. But that was the first year that they brought replay in, and I knew when the shot went in,
nope,
it wasn't good. And they looked, they reviewed it, and we end up losing by one. I told one of the assistant coaches, Sheila doesn't have to come out and do this. One of the best interviews I had. Her first line to me was, Scotty K, we were close to going to the elite or the Final Four. And I'll never forget that day until the day I died. But it was so awesome that she came out and she says, "You knew it, I didn't." I said, "I knew it. I knew you didn't because you're in it." But I knew it, and it ended up, and she says, "We were that close to going to the Final Four."
You covered championship years and lean years for Minot State and Minot High alike. And I know it's kind of hard to maybe lump sports together, but are there any kind of themes or cultures that needs to be there for a Minot State team to contend in their league and like a Minot High team to be one of the best in the WDA or the state on their level? What needs to show up?
Let's talk college right now. I mean, we've had some lean years on both the men's and women's side and in football because of our move to Division I or Division II. But what Coach Aldrich is doing with the football program, he's changed the culture. That culture needed to be changed. I knew it was going to take time, and they're going to surprise some people down the road. Basketball, I think, we had some great years on the women's side. We've had a couple down years, but I think that's coming back. I think Matt Merkin's doing just a super job with his men's program. I like what he's got coming in this year. Go to Minot High.
Mm-hmm.
One of the highlights of my career will be the back state championships that Minot High and Dean Winchesky had in 15, 16, and 17. I know there's been some disappointment since that, but I will say about that 3-year group that they had from 15 through 17 was one of the closest groups I've ever seen. They were talented, don't get me wrong. They had a lot of talented people, but the reason they win back to back to back is because that was a very close-knit group. Now, the other three-peat that I have to bring up is the Bishop Ryan girls.
Oh, yeah,
three-peat.
for sure.
That's something
right before me. I just missed it.
Oh, my God. Ben, you would have enjoyed that. And the thing that you won't remember is how talented that group of young ladies were. I don't know if it'll ever be done again. Mm-hmm. I don't know if a Class B program could put that many teams together. Now, Hillsborough Central Valley did it in boys back-to-back. But for them to go on the run they went was totally unbelievable, and I was part of that, too. So, and I've been through the lean years with all my programs. But you know what? I enjoyed the lean years just as much as I enjoyed the good years.
We're planning on having Jolie Stewart on the show here down the road too.
Really?
To get from, even with between her and Peter, I mean, they were coaching for way back, and they had Hannah here, and then Ani too, and then what she's been able to do at Wyzetta, and then another kid going to the Big Ten, and Eli's not too shabby too with what he's accomplished for sure here. I do want to ask you about, obviously you support a lot of what Coach Aldrich has been doing with the football team, and you said the culture change that needed to happen has happened, and they're on the upswing. Can you tell me a little bit about where they're coming from? What change needed to be what change needed to happen? Like, with regard to what was there before?
Well, Ben, the biggest thing, and I don't remember when you first got
Coach
here.
Hughes was here when
Okay.
early
The
when
problem
2015
that
when I was here.
happened is
Yeah.
the biggest thing that happened to Minot State, and we were making the football. I'm talking about
Yeah.
the transition that we were making from NAIA to Division II. Coach Rudolph, good friend of mine, took the offensive coordinator's job at UND. We go out, we hired Todd Hoffner, who we all know has been so successful at Mankato, and because of some things that weren't his, I mean, basically, I'll come out and say what happened to him in Mankato originally should have never happened, but he loses his job. We hire him in February. He comes, gets situated here, and then all of a sudden, a judge rules in Minnesota that he can have his job back at Mankato if he wants it. So now he leaves the program in lurch.
Right.
And I don't blame Coach Todd Hoffner for this. He did what he needed to do, and I understand why he did it, because he should have never been let go from Mankato in the first place. Okay, now we're scrambling at Minot State.
It's hard enough to be in flux whether you're going from NAIA to D2.
We bring in Coach Hughes, and I have no problem with Tyler. I was a good friend of Tyler's. But then he had some things happen in the summer and the fall before his first year that weren't good. And I don't know if all the kids were vested into the program, but we were just trying to get through it. And people don't understand that Coach A was a finalist for the job when Coach Hoffman
first time around.
And then Coach Hughes decided, okay, I'm going to get out of coaching. I'm going to get out of coaching. And this is nothing against Tyler. I love Tyler, and I thought he was a great football coach, but things just didn't work for him. When Coach A came in there, he knew there needed to be a culture change. He wasn't all about winning and losing to start with. All coaches want to win. But he saw that we needed to change the culture. And a lot of people, is he going to do that in a year? Is he going to do that in 2 years? Is he going to do that in 3 years? No. It ain't going to happen at that level. It ain't going to happen overnight. And some boosters, or not, I'm not going to say boosters, but some fans of Minot State couldn't understand why we're only winning 1 or 2 or whatever. This football program at Minot State has turned the corner.
I've heard a lot of good things from his players. I mean, they volunteer at different other sports at Minot State like athletes do. Like, I've seen them at their jobs around town and things like that. And I've asked him about Coach A, and it seems like he's a real players coach guy. But at the same time,
he's a disciplinarian.
Yeah, exactly. You go from
he'll discipline somebody
100%, because you go from having issues with players maybe not being invested in your opinion from like the end of Coach Hughes into now. How does Coach Aldrich, from your point of view, earn the respect of the guys and then come out on the other side being the players' coach? People can buy in while he's disciplining as well.
Number one thing, because he's honest with them. He was honest with every one of those kids that when he got the job, they weren't his recruits, but out of all those kids that were in that program and went through all that turmoil, bought into what he was doing. And a lot of people won't remember those kids 5 years from now because they played on a team that maybe was 1-10 or 0-11 or wherever they were. I don't care what they were. But they started changing the culture. And now all these kids, even the kids that graduated this past year, they have laid the foundation for what Coach Aldrich and I shouldn't say it's all Coach Aldrich. Coach Aldrich and his coaching staff has done. It's not all about X's and O's, Ben. It's about attitude, and it's about having kids buy into your system, not just on the field, but off the field, especially at the college level.
This is going to seem like a really hard left turn, but I wanted to get in a little bit about maybe even away from your on-field responsibilities that you had, at least covering the teams. You've had a couple of things that you've had to do that aren't in like the realm of sports when you've worked as a radio guy. I'm thinking about if you're talking to like all-day event type things, or Gooseneck gets an ad interview, things like that. What's some of the non-sports things that you've done, and how's the preparation for that kind of thing different?
Well, the thing about it is part of being in a small market in radio, you got to do a lot of different things. Yeah, I had a show that I went and played music, and I talked and did a lot of remotes. But the one thing, and if I ever write a book, I'll probably have 3 chapters on this, is in 2011, the flood, the historic flood we had. I spent 12 to 16 to 18 hours on the air for about 3 weeks straight. I can remember it was me and Jim Bradley and Jamie Bruner and Ellison. I mean, it was unbelievable. That is something, Ben, outside of sports that I'll never forget till the day I die. Those 3 weeks that we were giving, or that we were providing information to people that had no clue. They had to move out of their house.
It's a responsibility, is what it is.
Well, and the water was up to their ceiling, whatever, second story, whatever. That was the first time I ever broke down on the air and had to be asked by my boss to say, go take 5 minutes, go take 10 minutes. Just to know that I had a daughter at that time that didn't have to move out because of the big dike they had at Broadway, but she was moving out of her house, moving in with her mother. I had all these friends that are out there that are getting devastated by floodwaters, and I couldn't do anything for them because I was on the air providing information, and for the most part,
you can't call them. You're doing your own
no.
Thing. Yeah.
For the most part, all those people came back to me and said, you were doing what you were supposed to do. But I will never forget that 3-month period from from end of May 2011 till end of July. I'll never forget those 18 hours. I remember the one night, and I have to bring this up. We got off the air after about 12 hours on the air straight.
Mm-hmm.
And we were told, okay, we're going to shut down operations. We're all going to go home and get some sleep. We'll be back at 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever. And I'm sitting outside with Jim Bradley. Rest in peace, Jim. Jim was a guy that I've known all my life, but he was our morning guy on our FM station. We're sitting out in the back on his pickup, and just kind of, okay, we got to go home. And the next thing we know, sirens go off. Now we got a tornado warning. So we go back on and spend 2 more hours on the air talking about the tornado. And those are things that I'll never, ever forget, Ben. And I will never forget the 2011 flood. I will never forget that as long as I live, as well as a lot of the things that I've been through as a broadcaster over the last 40-plus years. My daughter says I should write a book.
Yeah.
But I can't remember it all.
I can only imagine, man. I only got here in 2015, and the only thing I could see is, boy, the parks are brand new because everything else was ravaged by the flood, and even doing like the pandemic safety measures and all that stuff, it's not the flood, man.
Well, but the thing about it is, Ben, I'm going to bring that up. I did the flood for 3 months. Guess what? There's not a lot of sports out there to cover right now, is there?
No.
And I've seen you on TV and doing some things on social media. Hey, I didn't know you could be a news person.
You know, we all try our best.
I know you
got to enjoy the day shift too. So I want to try to get a little bit back to the plus side. Is I see you a couple times at the Flicker Tail, but you're working there, man. You're not getting to have fun. Do you ever get a chance to enjoy the state fair when you're helping out there? I see all you guys there hucking beers, giving it out to people that get to drink it, or what?
I've been involved with the state fair for over 20 years, and there's been years I'm not going to go do it anymore.
They pulled me back in.
Guess what? I really enjoy the state fair. I mean, we're going to miss it. I'm going to miss it big time this year. because of some other circumstances with me and that sort of thing. But I'm gonna miss the state fair. Uh, but I enjoy the state fair. I enjoy the people. I mean, there's people I have met through the state fair that I never knew who they were till they, till until I started working the state fair. Um, at times it was tough. I mean, why am I here? What am I doing? Whatever. But all in all, 99%, maybe 95% of the time, I enjoyed that. I'm gonna miss it, and I'm gonna miss the flicker tail, and I miss all of that. Hopefully, we can come back in 2021. But getting back to the original question, the last 4 or 5 years, when I've been able to go out in the midway with my daughter and son-in-law and the grandkids, and let them ride on the kiddie rides. Right now, she ain't old enough to get on the big ones, although she wants to. But just to walk around and do those kind of things. I love the state fair, and God willing, I'll probably still be involved in the state fair until they tell me I can't do it anymore.
That's the spirit. Now, speaking of people that you don't even know who they are, and sometimes it's a little bit in jest, I want to ask you a little bit. One of the awards that you've received is State Fair Employee of the Day,
Yeah.
About 50 times over from the old @FoSkittles Twitter account. Account hasn't really tweeted since 2018. Do you
There's
find
a reason for that.
do you find any humor in that at all? Sometimes they've gone too far, but what's
I'll-
your take on it?
Ben, I was okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean, to this day, I still don't know who initiated it, and who developed it. And okay, it was fun. It was a conversation piece. I had a lot of people that would laugh about it and tell me about it or whatever, and that sort of thing. But in the end, the reason it went away was because it got to a point that it got to be too much personal to me in what was being put on that. And thankfully, a couple days later, it was gone. And I mean, okay, I'll say I embraced it. People were talking about it. But when that happened and it involved, and I'm not gonna bring up names or anything, but it involved a child, and I just thought it was inappropriate, and thankfully, within 24 hours, it was gone.
I think the acceptable humor that I got the most kick out of was when they made the like the fake yard campaign signs, and it was like, check that for Kittell.
Yeah.
Go Tarkenton.
I mean, it was all, and I know it was all in fun, but it just got to a point where at that point, it got personal, and it was almost like I was that it offended me because I was getting text messages and phone calls from other people saying, "How can you say that?" Because they didn't understand it was a fake account. So I just honestly and very, I guess, just asked them to quit, and it went away.
And then poof.
Guess nobody else wanted to bring it back.
I can't believe it's actually one of the topics that I'm going to get to talk with our buddy Joe Skrzyszewski, one of my co-anchors here. It's a question of he doesn't have the career length in Minot area. He's been here for a few years now that you have, but I'm going to have to get a chance to ask him, Joe, is it looks like you made it moment because somebody made a fake Twitter account on him, and theirs hasn't really lasted acceptably as long as, like, there's some good stuff, some good taste humor in faux Skittles, but the fake Joe Skrzyszewski is, like, way too weird and political that I had to get off and block it. I got tagged a couple of times. Pretty bad stuff going on that one, but what are you going to do? Speaking of all in good fun, I've seen you around Wildwood a few times ever since I got my $125 membership. Already paid for that 2 times over, and that's fantastic.
Yep.
How's your golf game these days, and who's winning between me and you when we play it? The 12 at Wildwood and even the 18 when they finally get it done.
Well, I don't know. We can have that contest if you want to, Ben. I'd love to go out and play golf with you, but
it'll be like the next charity match.
Okay.
Yeah.
My golf game. I've played more golf this year than I have in the last 2 years. Um,
That's an exponential meteoric rise in
and
golf.
part of it's
Yeah.
because of my situation, but part of it is that I just make myself go out. I enjoy it. I'm not very good.
Scotty's getting out of the house is what
I'm
he's
a
doing.
hacker.
Yeah.
I'm a hacker, but I enjoy playing. I've had the opportunity this spring to be able to take my two grandkids out and play with them. You know what? Played the other day with, and then my daughter, who I could never get out when she was younger. She's been out with me. Uh, yes, patience runs thin, after 2.5 hours. But that part of it, I love it. I love the part that I'm starting to reconnect with people that I haven't seen for a while, simply because I hadn't played a lot of golf. Best thing that ever happened to me is when I decided to buy. I mean, I can go out and play at Wildwood anytime I want to, and I love that. I'm going out. I mean, I've played a lot. I'm going to go out and play some more. Um, I'm kind of glad that I got reconnected with the golf. But again, I'm not very good, and you'll probably beat me, Ben.
Oh man, that would do wonders to my confidence too. I'm terrible.
Well, the only thing I said, you shot a 54 out there.
That was one time. Back to the 70s on 12s again, man.
But you know what? It's not about scoring now. I'm 62. I know you're a lot
Just
younger.
shooting ages over here. Yeah.
But Ben, it's all about getting out, getting some exercise, and having fun with some buddies. Maybe having a few refreshments.
Couple candy bars. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple candy bars, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's why I do it now. Is my connection to other people, get some exercise, get out, get some fresh air, and I'll probably play more golf this summer, than I've probably played in the last 6 years. And a lot of it's going to do because we don't have a lot to do. There ain't going to be a lot to do this summer.
There we go, man.
But no, I just enjoy the game. There was a time in my life, God, I wanted to be the next Tiger Woods because I thought I could be that good. Nah, there's no way. I wish I could get. Well, I did today. I went par, and yesterday I birdied the last hole. That just okay. I'm coming back tomorrow. Now you got to understand.
Keep coming back tomorrow.
I may have had a 7 or an 8 during the round, but it's all about having fun.
Gotta love it, man. Living the dream across the board. That's Scotty K. Thanks for your time.